Hello and welcome to the PDA Summit, and my name's Andrew Whitehouse and I'll be talking to you about a few of my thoughts about PDA. Just so you know you're in safe hands, I think you should learn a little bit about me. Why not? If you want to be in contact with me, my name's Andrew Whitehouse at People First Education. If you're a Facebook person, I'm not brilliant at Facebook, but I do my best. I do generally catch up with people. More likely to be able to get me on Twitter at Andrew WSEN, Andrew WSEN. Same on Instagram, Andrew WSEN. You can also get me on LinkedIn, Andrew Whitehouse at People First Education. You can email me, Andrew at peoplefirsteducation.com, and I'm also available via an online booking form on the website peoplefirsteducation.com. So there's no excuse for not having a chat with me. I'm always pleased to hear from you, and quite often when we do these kind of conference appearances, there's often more questions than there are answers. So what do I do? Right, okay, so probably the stuff I'm most well known for is the stuff that I do less of, to be honest with you. So I did a TEDx from disability to superpowers. I'd really love you to check that out. If you enjoy TED Talks, that sort of thing, do check it out. It's on YouTube. And I talk about some of the things that people with neurological diversities can do that people without neurological diversities can't do. So some of the benefits of being neurodiverse. Since delivering that TEDx, I've done 2 more TED events, and you know, they're worth checking out as well if you can find them. So I'm also a Bamford lecturer from the British Academy of Audiology. This is because I'm a hearing ambassador, and so I do have auditory processing disorder, and I'm a hearing aid user. I use artificial intelligence hearing aids, and my Bamford lecture was about creating autism-friendly audiology clinics. And you say to yourself, well, I don't really need that. Well, you might, because in actual fact, I delivered it in such a way that you could change audiology clinics to anything you wanted to create autism-friendly swimming pools, supermarkets, classrooms, bedrooms, or anything you like. And so it's worth checking out. Again, it's on YouTube, and it's also on my YouTube channel. I'm a forensic special educational needs and disability consultant. That means that I work in the courts delivering expert witness work in special educational needs and disability court cases. And that really is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the law as we go along this morning, but or this afternoon, I can't remember when you're watching me, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the law with you. And I'm a short course provider at Bishop Grosseteste University, and by the time you've seen this, I'll have also been a short course provider at Lincoln University, and I deliver all over the place. What I'm basing the work on today, though, is my work working with individual schools, colleges, education establishments and workplaces, and my observations and consultations. So this is real hands-on stuff. This is real boots on the ground stuff. So we're really going to get stuck into things I've seen. Okay, so it's called today PDA and the Great Custard Pie Fight. Now there we've got Stan and Ollie there, and they're doing their thing, and you know, they were always getting into squabbles with people. Many squabbles were unnecessary, but you know, that's why we love them. And it is the Great Custard Pie Fight. Now if you look at that picture, what we've got there is Stan and Ollie, both of them in a situation they could have avoided, as I've said, nearly always could have avoided. What I'd like to say is, how much of your life is like this? How much of your time do you feel that you spend like this in the Great Custard Pie Fight? And I'm willing to bet quite a lot. And so what we want to do is we want to avoid the Great Custard Pie Fight. We want to move away from it. We don't want anything to do with it. Yeah? And so I'm going to give you some information about PDA that when it all comes together at the end of this talk, you'll say, yeah, okay, when we piece those pieces together, we didn't need the custard pie fight. So that's what we're going to be doing this afternoon. Keep saying this morning. Okay. We need a cohesive, unified team approach. This means everybody got to work together. And so I've put here, there are no passengers on spaceship Earth, we are all crew. Well, here's the point, right? So if I'm going in doing observations and things like that, and observations is what I spend a great deal of my time doing, I might be doing a whole school. I can spot straight away, yeah, or throughout the day, I can spot the classroom that's not having that unified team approach. I can spot the professionals that don't believe in adapting their practice to meet the needs of the whole group. I can spot that. And not only that, you can also spot through conversations and observations the difficulties or the reluctance that they've got with going along with what's been decided by the team. Now, unfortunately, that will always happen. I've got schools I've been working with for years, and they always seem to have somebody. I think it just is the way. But having said that, one of the best ways of delivering any kind of training is to have a whole team involved. Have everyone there, talk to everybody. Even if you disagree with me, I want you all to disagree with me, you know? And so there are no passengers on spaceship Earth, only crew. Let's talk a little bit about the law. I talk about the law a lot. So, the Equality Act 2010, we have to make reasonable, proportionate and appropriate adjustments. What is a reasonable, proportionate and appropriate adjustment? What is that thing? I'll tell you. A reasonable adjustment is basically just that, reasonable. It's all about communication. And there is no hard and fast answer to reasonable adjustments. So for example, you know what would work with one child or one family wouldn't work with another. I say to you, the best thing you can possibly do with reasonable adjustment is discuss it with everybody. Have a conversation with everybody. Get everyone in the room and say, does this meet you? Is this something you're happy to go with? Because you know, they've had the opportunity to say yes, they've had the opportunity to say no. And for some of my legal work that I do, you know, I do find that people, that we could have avoided all this by having a conversation right at the beginning. So, so that's that. So I've delivered 2 Ofsted conferences this year, and the new Ofsted framework is all about the life journey of the child. Now, the previous Ofsted framework, I've just not got round to remember, you know, learning off by heart. The new one was to be good. You had to meet the needs, interests, and aspirations of individuals and groups of individuals. Now, I delivered that at an Ofsted conference. There was a chap there very high up with Ofsted, and while I was actually delivering it, he was sitting to the side of the stage. And I said to him, I said, is this correct now? He said, not exactly word for word, but the spirit of this is still true. And so, needs, interests, aspirations of individuals and groups of individuals. When we're talking about PDA, we're talking about an anxiety need to be in control. So we have needs that we have to meet. And the SEND Reform Bill, or Code of Practice 2014, 0 to 25, says that we need to put the interventions in place for those who may have SEN. That's may have, okay? So we're not waiting for a diagnosis, and I know some of us get very frustrated that up and down the country you've got quite a postcode lottery of getting a diagnosis of PDA. Well, actually, you just need the presentations, yeah, for the people tasks for their education to put interventions in place. You have a legal responsibility to put the interventions in place if that person looks like they may have SEN. And who is responsible? It is the teacher, okay? That is the absolute buck stops here person. Now, this doesn't mean you can't, if you're a teacher, you can't delegate. Of course you can delegate, you've got people there doing different things, but what it also means is that when it goes wrong, you are responsible. When it goes right, you're responsible as well. So we do have positives as well. Okay. So William Haley, historical educationalist. I know very little about William Haley, apart from that I pulled out this quote from him, and it really, really resonated with me. Education would be so much more effective if its purpose were to ensure that by the time they leave school, every boy and girl should know how much they don't know and be imbued with a lifelong desire to know it. Isn't that inspiring words? I personally think so. Anyway, I use this phrase a lot, and I think it applies to myself. So I'm an adult with ADHD, boom, and as an adult with ADHD, my learning at school, which was from 1970 to 1982, my learning at school was pretty poor, and I was described as a clever boy that didn't apply himself. But the truth of it is, when I look back, I'm now 54 years old, and I look back and I shudder to think of the learning and teaching, and how boring it was, and how dreadfully uninclusive it was. Fortunately, I was one of the lucky ones, because I didn't get put off learning. I went away, and I went to college twice, three different colleges. That wasn't jumping from one to the other from failing, by the way. It was genuine learning. I then went to university and trained as an English teacher, and I then went from university and did 3 master's levels qualifications. And so I was okay, but we are in danger sometimes of putting children off learning for life. And it could have happened to me. And so we have to remember this stuff, that we need to imbue them with a lifelong desire to know it. Give them the bug. Give them the bug for learning. Okay. Yeah, a bit more coffee. It's decaf, by the way. I've been doing decaf for around 6 or 8 months now. A bit longer than that, actually. And it is a much more pleasant experience. So, this is an idea that came to me on a train. So I'm on a train, and I thought this thought, and I thought I could write it down. I've been telling people this in a roundabout way, but the clarity of this came to me on a train journey. Behaviour management is not about dealing with issues as they arise. Okay? So we're not going in and going, stop that. Behaviour management is about avoiding issues in the first place. Laying out the ground rules, yeah? If you deal with issues as they arise, you will not reduce the number of incidents. What we're talking about here is firefighting. Yeah? Firefighting helps nobody. Okay? What you've got to do is avoid incidents by understanding the impairments and triggers. You will significantly reduce challenging behaviour. So you've got to know what ticks people off, what annoys people. And so for me, I would say, the things that bug me, I know that I know what they are. I keep telling people what they are. Why do they continue doing them? Who knows? Yeah, but I also need to learn about other people and other people's needs. So for me, I know that, for example, one of my children has got quite bad sensory issues, quite difficult sensory issues. So you avoid the big smells and the noises and stuff like that. It's just an obvious thing, really. Now we're going to go back to PDA again, and I'm going to say PDA, needs, interests, aspirations. PDA, anxiety-led need to be in control. Anxiety-led need to be in control. So to bring down their anxieties, we have to give them control. This should be easy enough, shouldn't it? Yeah? So here's the thing. This was my grandfather's coffee mug. He was called Herbie. He was married to Maisie. And then my mother was Maisie, and my oldest daughter is also Maisie the third. And there's not a lot of difference between these 3 Maisies. But my grandmother Maisie, she was very much into control. She needed to know everything that was going on. She needed to know everything that was going on with her neighbours. She needed to know everything that was going on with Herbie's work, in the house, all those things. That was her need. She would get very anxious if she didn't know things. I've known her, I mean, she died in the 1970s, but I've known her to follow people around town who she didn't know, just to see where they were going. She didn't do any harm. She just followed these people around. Okay, so that's Maisie. Herbie was okay with all this. Herbie was very happy for Maisie to be in control. Herbie would facilitate control. Okay, he would do this. Was Herbie a happy man? Or was Herbie an unhappy man? Let's think about this. Honestly, Herbie was a very happy man. Herbie was extremely happy to let Maisie be in control because he understood that that was her anxiety need. He wouldn't maybe put it in those words, but that's what he understood. And that's what we have to do, is we have to take that into consideration. Now, why am I telling you this about Herbie and Maisie? Because when I go into schools and colleges, I get a lot more than you'd think. People, I'd explain it's an anxiety need to be in control, and then people would say to me quite often, they will say, "Oh, we'll soon get that out of him." Or one of the phrases I hear a lot is, "We've got a really good reception teacher that tames them in the first year." So it's about looking at it differently, because all of a sudden I can see the custard pie fight trying to brew up, if you like. So there you go. Anxiety need to be in control. So what you really need to do with this anxiety need to be in control, so what you've got to do is you've got to say, okay, let's put that person in control if it's safe and sensible. Or maybe make them feel that they're in control. That's a good one. So that's some of the stuff. And that's what I kind of base a lot of my PDA training on. It affects males and females equally. And so, for a long time, we thought that that PDA was predominantly a male condition, but in actual fact, it isn't. Although that's still a subject for some debate. I don't know if you've had experiences of females with PDA. I can look back. One of the most tricky children to manage that I had when I was a teacher, back when I had better eyesight, darker hair and better hearing, was a year 6 girl, and I wish I knew then what I know now about PDA, because I'm sure a lot of this stuff would help her out. But yeah, definitely, we don't want to get confused. Now, ADHD, for example, we believe is 80% male, and even then we get people missing out on females with ADHD, and so with PDA, it's a 50-50 thing probably, and we don't really want people missing out on that. So do not forget PDA with females. So here we go. Right, so picking your battles. When should the educator intervene? When they should not. When to respond and when to react. And wow, I don't know what's happened there. There's some kind of formatting issue. But don't worry, I know what I'm talking about. So one of the things I do, as I said, is observations. Now, any of you who do observations, maybe you're a little bit more focused than me. And no, I am focused. But I do get interested in more than the child I'm supposed to be looking at. And quite often, if I'm really honest with you, there's somebody a little bit more interesting than the one I'm supposed to be looking at. There's somebody that's doing something. And this was a case in a primary school, lower key stage 2 in Nottinghamshire. And what was happening was, off the top of my head, I can't even remember anything about the child I was brought in to observe. But I do remember walking in and just seeing another child. It was a boy, behaving in a little bit of a challenging way. So what the teacher had done, they laid out one of these science activities. It's the one where you make volcanoes with bicarbonate of soda and red paint and all the rest of it. And this lad, he walked in and he looked at that and he looked at the teacher and he went, "I'm not doing that." I thought, oh, he's good. Let's keep an eye on this fella, see what he gets up to. So the teacher said, well, we have to have this finished today. And he said, "I'm not doing it." And he said, she said, "I tell you what," she said, "what did you want to do?" I thought, this is a good start. She's given him the control. He said, "I want to do some writing." This was a child that loved writing. This was a child who enjoyed writing. So he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll do it." And she said, "If you do this," she said, "I'll get you a writing activity." That was it. Sorry, I'm getting all bundled up. So he said, "I enjoyed writing." And she said, "If you do this, I'll give you a writing task after break." I thought, he's never going to go for that. And he did. He did go for it. So, gets his writing task. And she stays in at break time, gets his writing task out. He comes in from break, and I'm thinking this is all going a little bit too smoothly. He looked at the writing task and went, "I'm not doing that." And she said, "I've just missed my break laying all this out for you." He said, "I don't care, I'm not doing it." And that was the issue. That he took control that little bit later on, if you see what I mean. He kind of lulled her into a sense of security that he was going to do this thing, and actually at the last minute he took back that control to himself. So at lunchtime I spoke to the teacher and I said, "Look," I said, "very interested in that boy that wouldn't, that wanted to do the writing and then didn't and all the rest of it." And she said, "Oh, him." And her face changed and she said, "That boy," and you could see she didn't like him. And she had a packet of Maryland cookies on her desk. She said, "You see these cookies?" She said, "You see these? If he asked me for a cookie and I said yes, he wouldn't take it." And she was angry. And I thought to myself, why be angry about this? For me, "Can I have a cookie, miss?" "Yes, you can, but I don't want it." "Okay." By being angry, she's fueling the custard pie fight. And so that was kind of where I see this. And that's a lesson there, isn't it? We have to pick our battles. We have to pick our battles. It truly wasn't important whether we ate the biscuit or not. Now here's an interesting thought for you. There is no science behind it apart from my observation. And so I'm going to talk about autism and the 4 areas of diversity, and there's lots of ways of defining autism. I know this very well. It's quite an old one here, but this works for me and the way it's presented, and it really works well with putting in interventions. I should explain to you, I don't do diagnosis, I do strategies and interventions, although I do supporting observations for documentary evidence. So here we go. Right, so if we said that the 4 areas of diversity in autism are communication, social and emotional understanding, and lack of flexible thought, and sensory differences, and if we agree that PDA is a type of autism, which not everyone does, so let's just go with me for this for a little while, yeah? And now we've got ADHD, inattention, impulsivity and hyperactivity. What we've got here is we've got 2 different criterias here, but what I do know is that often PDA is confused with ADHD. So people think they've got an ADHD child there. So if you look at those 3 impairments or areas of diversity for ADHD, inattention, impulsivity and hyperactivity, and we assumed that the person with PDA has problems with communication, social, emotional understanding, rigid thinking and sensory, but the person teaching that child is concentrating on these things because they think it's ADHD, we're quite obviously going to miss miss the important things for this child. And so what I do is I say, communicate with each other what is going, where the difficulties lie with this child, what things are. So instead of trying to label it, you know, that can come later on. There are people, the professionals to do this, but instead of trying to label it, look at where the problems are, look at where the difficulties are, look at where the needs for interventions are, and put your interventions to meet that. Okay? Just put your stuff in place to meet that, rather than what you think it might be. And so what I like to say is, there was a TV show called Catchphrase, and he said, say what you see. Say what you see. It was rubbish. But anyway, what I'm asking you to do is to say what you see to each other, and then put your interventions in place for where the issues are. Hopefully, as we said early on in this presentation, early on in the difficulties, before they've exploded, when you know what is going to cause the problem, put it in to stop it before it happens, not after it happens. So communication, really do talk to each other about this stuff, because you'll get far more interesting and effective results. And what I would also say is, you don't always need to follow blindly what somebody has said. So for example, if I come into your school and I say, I've seen this happen, this happen, this happen, this happen, doesn't mean that's what's going to happen the following day when I'm not there. In fact, quite often when you get an external in the room, it's a very different presentation anyway. Similarly, you may even have diagnoses that you follow. So for example, I've been in one particular school where a child had got a diagnosis of autism, and I'm observing that child, and I could see no autism, but I could see lots of presentations of ADHD and quite a few presentations of dyslexia. You should work with what you see, not what you think you should be seeing. Yeah, and the teacher that was having the problems in that classroom, what he was doing great. He was buying loads of books about autism and interventions. None of them were working, and the reason they weren't working is because there was so much more or different going on in that child. So, say what you see, catchphrase. Be explicit in what behaviours you expect. So for me, when I go to a school, or I get a phone call from a school, sometimes they're not explicit. So I might get a phone call and it says something like, hello Andrew, yeah, we've got a lot of challenging behaviour in year 3. We've got one particular child who very difficult, just challenging behaviour, and they've got challenging behaviour, and you say, oh, you know, what sort of challenging behaviour? Oh, it's very difficult to manage. None of this really helps. I want explicit communication about what is actually happening in that classroom with that child. Yeah, and if I do that, what I want to do, I want to be able to put targeted interventions in place. Now, here's the thing. If I run dyslexia workshops, I run workshops around a range of neurodiversity, so autism, ADHD, dyslexia, PDA, this kind of thing, and dyspraxia. And let's just kind of diversify over to dyslexia for a while. If you come to one of my dyslexia workshops, they're very much about hands-on interventions. And you might come away with 50 or even 100 strategies to try with the child that you're working with. Now, what do you think's going to happen if you throw 100 strategies at a child? They're not going to be able to cope with it. You're not going to be able to cope with it. Everyone's going to be disappointed, and we're all going to have a wasted time. So what I would say is, what I would strongly suggest is that you pick 2 or 3 things, achievable things. Okay, son, we're going to get round to getting the D's and B's round the right way. Even smaller than that. We're going to work on getting our D's round the right way. And that's what you do. Yeah? You do manageable chunks, because you'll achieve more in manageable chunks. So here we go. This is an example from a school I went to. and it was a fascinating situation where we got a boy, and he'd been many school placements, some of them very short, and they were having a lot of problems with him, and I think he might have been year 4, something like that. It's quite a while ago now, but anyway, this particular child, they were struggling, and we had a twilight event just for him, okay, which does happen, and they were just discussing all these things that he did, and I was finding it really difficult to unpick it all until somebody said about the rules in the classroom. So let me just gather myself. Who makes the rules? Okay, so they got a system in this school where they got 10 rules in each classroom. We had 4 school rules. These were set by the head teacher. We had 3 rules set by the teacher and 3 rules set by the class. So in effect, every class in the school, they got the same 4 rules, but then the teacher and the class shared the other 6. And so they would be possibly different from class to class. This boy had come in November, right? And I was there not long after, to be honest. He'd made himself quite known quite early on. So what happened was, one of the teachers was saying, oh, with the class rules, he's terrible. He goes through the class rules and he'll take them in turn, and he will literally choose one, go back to his teacher and say, hello miss, I've just damaged school property, it's number 1 rule on your list there, and it was a laptop, and here it is, it's broken, as you can see, I've hit it with this hammer, and what's going on, you know, so explicit. Hello miss, I've taken something that didn't belong to me, I've had this girl Julie, I've had her lunch, she can't have it back, I've eaten it, and it's number 3 on your list there, and you can't work this out. And so, you know, it's a good one. It's a good one. If you're going back, especially if you're education based, or you're in a parent group or something like that, if you go back to your classroom and or you're going to feed back on this stuff, try this one out and say to your colleagues or your friends, why was he doing this? Why was he doing this? Because for me, the key word is control. And the control here was this, that he wasn't there when they made the rules in September. And his message, and I've got a lovely phrase I love to use, all behaviours communication. The kids that need the most love ask for it in the most unloving of ways. So all behaviours communication. So what he was communicating was, you didn't involve me in these rules. You didn't get me to be part of this. And what we maybe should have done is, when he started at that school, we should have revisited these rules, and we should have negotiated those rules with the rest of the class again, yeah, to give that boy the control that he needed, the anxiety-based need to be in control. And then I thought to myself, so if we got a child with PDA coming in with these control needs, what we need to do with him is, yeah, do this, to go through the rules again. And then I thought to myself even more, I thought, we could do that with every child, absolutely every child that knew, whether they got PDA or not. Because for every child that's suffering with that, you've got other children who will be, but not expressing it quite so much. So, or just bothered by it, feeling not in control. So there you go, nice easy stuff. There's this kid, right? Spits, throws chairs, messes about with Velcro on his shoes. Messing about with Velcro. I do miss the fact that I'm not live with you today, because the messing about with Velcro always gets a bit of a from Key Stage 1 professionals, because they do that and it does drive you nuts, I know this. So what we've done, we've observed the child and we've picked 3 behaviours: spitting, throwing chairs and messing about with Velcro on shoes. Now what we could do is we've got to say, okay, we need to focus on one of those behaviours, and we need to choose the right one to start off with. And I would ask the group, and I would say to the group, which one should we start with? Which one? Which one's the most important to you? And most people say, oh, throwing chairs is bad, throwing chairs is really dangerous, and, you know, spitting can be a difficult one, you know. But actually, I always go for the low-level behaviour. In education, everything we learn, we start small and we work up, right? And yet, when it comes to behaviour, we always seem to try and start with the big stuff. Well, what I'm saying to you is, start small, just like everything else, yeah? You don't spell the word cantaloupe before you spell the word cat. And so, I would say, yeah, okay, you know, let's start with the Velcro. That's a nice one. And yeah, obviously if somebody spits and throws chairs, yeah, we've got to deal with that. But let's make a target for the Velcro thing, because then we're getting a target that's achievable. Then we're getting into the world of rewards. Then we're getting into success. Then we're probably getting into a position where we're not in such a frame of mind that we need to do all those other behaviours. We're probably in a frame of mind that we don't want to do anything to upset anyone, because we're getting praised for stuff that we're doing, for achieving stuff. So always go with that top, middle or bottom. Your top behaviour, your middle behaviour, your bottom behaviour. And I would say every time you need more Barrymore in your life, top, middle and bottom. Strike it lucky and hit that low level behaviour. Pick 3 behaviours, top, middle and bottom, and are you ready for this? Then you can learn to achieve, you can celebrate, and you can move forward. And chances are you might not even have to move forward with those further behaviours that they may have stopped already. So there we go. Achieve, celebrate, move forward. Fresh start every day. So fresh start every day. Where are we going with that? All right. So I don't want to see another behaviour day like yesterday. I hope we're in a better mood this morning. Or is Mr. Grumpy Chops here today, or is it Michael? You know, it's just all this kind of stuff. And you know, we need to forget this stuff. We need to forget this stuff. And I was working at a school in York where the Senko that was talking to me about this said to me, not a fresh start every day, fresh start every lesson. This was a secondary school, and I really totally got that. I really did. Thought, yeah, fresh start every lesson. And so let it go, move on. Let it go and move on. Fresh start every day. This also applies to coming into school as well, doesn't it? And so when you're coming into school, nice big smile for these children. You don't know what's going on with them at home or all the rest of it. And so, you know, nice fresh start every day coming into school, and a fresh start every lesson. Absolutely. Right. I want to talk about social and emotional understanding in the classroom. And one of the things, if you know me as a person, if you're a friend of mine, or you've been on any of my training, or some people have been on lots and lots and lots of my training, you'll probably know that I'm quite obsessed with visual interventions. I'm really, really into it all, and a big fan of emojis and bitmojis and signage and things like that. Really, really into it, particularly when we're talking about autism and PDA, because in those conditions we've got very much visual processing. This is why your visual timetables are so important. It's why your blob trees from your blob trees, and if you've got that book off the internet, by the way, that's one of my favourite, the blob tree. If you Pip Wilson, that's what I was trying to think of. Blob tree. You've got your incredible 5-point scale, Mitzi Curtis, all these kind of stuff. Hugely important. These visuals really, really work with people with PDA and other autisms. And so, you know, I want you to think about, when you go back to your home or your classroom, 5 things you can make visual. Next to my bathroom mirror, I've got a picture of a horse baring its teeth, like that. And this picture of the horse is there to remind my kids to brush their teeth. It works. I'll tell you another one. To get them to change their underpants, I drew a piece of paper with a pair of underpants on the door. And you know what? It's not foolproof, but it works better than telling them because of that visual processing. So 5 things you can make visual in the home or the classroom. I'll give you number one. Number one, you always, always, always have to have a visual timetable. Visual timetable is hugely important. You know, you really don't want to be without one. In my opinion, visual timetable is the best, most effective form of behaviour management that you can possibly get. So, visual timetable before everything else. Right, moving on. Rewards. If you get this right, you can have a house point. House points. So for me, I don't know what kind of pupil you were at school. For me, I embraced the whole ethos of punk rock that was around me at the time. And when they gave me a house point, I used to say, I don't want it. Yeah, imagine their faces. A house point, Andrew. No thanks. You keep it. Give it to someone who wants it. I was being an anarchist. I didn't know what it was, but I was being one anyway. Now, had they given me something I wanted, that would have been slightly different. And so, you know, maybe they should have given me a cigarette. I used to smoke back in the school days. That would have got me motivated. No, joking aside, the house point didn't do it for me. So we need to look at meeting the needs, interests and aspirations of individuals and groups, and maybe the house point doesn't work. So, you know, we have to ask this question: what works? Sanctions or rewards? What works best, sanctions or rewards? Now in live groups, usually what happens is I get the feedback. Rewards, absolutely. What do you think I see most of? Sanctions. There's your answer. How do you feel if someone's negative with you? If someone's negative with me, believe me, I can be mighty negative back. Yeah? If someone's positive with me, I am so easily manipulated. If you say nice things to me, I will give you the world on a stick. Really, I just will. I'm just, you know, oh Andrew, you're really good at that. Oh, do you want me to do some more for you? I'm just really, really good at that. I don't think I'm that different to a lot of people. I think that a lot of people really do well with positive. So rewards are good. Now I remember talking to a colleague of mine about Dojo Points. Now I'm a big fan of Dojo Points. But what I will say is, this colleague said to me, oh, the kids all love them. It's a primary school with 350 kids. The kids all love them. Do they all love them? And, you know, or to some of them, or most of them love them. You will never, ever get a strategy that works for everybody. And so you need to sort of start thinking about this, because there's no one size fits all. You need to think, well, what can I do for this child? What can I do that's different for this child? Another lovely one-size-fits-all picture there. And so you've got to think differently. So this is a lovely one that I did with my daughter. So there'd been a bit of a kerfuffle in the house, and so I'm trying to put strategies into place. So I did something I'd never done before. I took her phone off her. Took her phone. Yeah. Anyway, she went, keep it. You pay for them anyway. No, wasn't expecting that. So I took her. This is not a picture of a laptop. This is a DVD player. That time she used to like watching historical dramas. So I took the DVD player off her. She went, keep it. I'll read a book. And she said, I'd like to see you take the bookshelf out of the room. And it was all screwed to the wall and stuff like this. I thought, I'm getting into the custard pie fight here, and I'm stupid because I'm letting this happen to me. And then unthinkingly, there was a makeup bag on the side. So her thing is makeup. I took the makeup bag and I walked out of the room. Oh my goodness me, you thought I'd killed somebody, you know, and it really didn't go down very, very well at all. But what I've learned there, a lot of people might look at that and go, that's the sanction. Take the makeup bag off her and that's your sanction. No, that's your reward. Yeah, turn it on its head. You know what makes her tick, you know what she likes. Give her that as the reward, you know. So what you want to be doing is, looking at what interesting rewards have worked for you. How do you find out? One of the things I use, and again, some of these are killer strategies. They're just so good, you can do anything with them. So this one here, this is the shoebox. And you can take a shoebox into school and you can say, right, put some things that you like in the shoebox. So in that shoebox, there's a Beatles record, there's a Carluccio's flyer, there's a Northern Soul badge, there's a juggling ball from Jorvik, there's a children's book, and there's the Starship Enterprise and a running medal. This could sum me up. This could just be about my life, about my world. And so, you know, we're happy to sort of do this stuff and say, right, we'll put this all together. All of a sudden you've learned loads about that child that you've not heard before. So it's a really, really good one. Really, really good one. So try that. You'll be amazed what you find out from the child. Okay, we're moving towards the end now. My grandmother used to say, the devil makes work for idle hands. This is Maisie, all in control. You're taking somebody with PDA on a trip to a stately home. 10 things. You can do this as homework. We can run through a little bit now. But think about it. Now, if we're looking at classic autism, we would be talking about getting your visual timetables in place. And we may be looking at the maps and things like that. But PDA, it's different. We have to think how you're helping that person be in control. You help that person to stay in control by giving them jobs that reflect that, monitor roles that reflect that. For example, you're helping that person stay in control by saying to them, okay, you can plan the route, you can plan who sits with everybody, you can liaise with the venue, finding out where we're going to have our lunch, you can do all these things. So have a little play with this, I'd love you to. If you really feel up to it, I'd be ever so pleased if you sent me back a list of 10 things you can do to prepare someone for PDA for a trip to a stately home. And my email is andrew@peoplefirsteducation.com. So that's a bit of homework for you. Remember, choose your battles, avoid the meltdown. Okay? You can't always avoid the meltdown. And I do deliver meltdown training. And what I do say is, anyone who delivers training and says they can stop meltdowns happening, I would be very dubious of that. We can minimise it, we can make it a bit better, but you know, I don't believe it's completely eradicatable, if that is a word. But you know, choose your battles, avoid the meltdown. Yeah. Make a plan. I've talked to you now for 48 minutes about lots of different things you can do. That's great, but the one thing you need to do now is you take this away with you. 5 things that you can do on Monday. What can you actually do to make a change? I want to thank you very, very much for listening to me today. It's been really a pleasure putting this together and working with you, and I sincerely hope that it's been of use to you and you enjoy the rest of the conference.